Disappointingly, Eoin doesn't feature that we can see so far anyway in any of this morning's national media, but Robbie Keane is somebody who does, as Daniel McDonald writes on the back page of the Irish Independent Sports section this morning, Robbie linked with Under-21 role as the clock ticks on King reign. So it does seem like Noel King's time as manager of the Under-21s is coming to an end soon. That's the way things appear, and that Robbie Keane, a couple of stories this morning, among them Dan McDonald writing that he is in frame for that role. It's an interesting development. Obviously, it hasn't been commented on greatly. John Delaney was in Belfast yesterday launching the Euro 2023 Under-21 Championship bid alongside his Northern Ireland counterparts. Wouldn't be overly drawn on the future of Noel King. Not for today, he said, but there'll be an announcement next week on that. He's currently the manager. I'll leave it at that, and so you can read what you want into that. But the news that Robbie Keane could be the next Ireland Under-21 manager.
Yeah, that would be quite the appointment. I think it would be a very good appointment, no? I think the more we tap into this resource that is a fantastic former playing group, the better. And the quicker we do it, the better as well. And it's great, like, these links don't happen, I would imagine, unless there's some sort of keenness on both sides. Like, it's not like Dan McDonald just picks out Robbie Keane out of the blue. Robbie Keane has obviously kind of intimated that this coaching career is something that he would like to do, and he would like to take in Ireland at some point in his coaching path. And when a player with his experience says something like that, well, you have to give him the opportunity. Like, there's plenty of examples of great players who've been great managers, and plenty of examples of great players who've been terrible managers. But there's only one way to find out. And you know, I think as a matter of habit, the FAI should be taking a chance on each and every one of these ex-pros who've achieved so much in the game.
Yeah, the only thing is about Robbie Keane, and it's not a reason to not give him the job, but we just don't know anything about him as a manager. He's had no experience of it whatsoever. He's said, certainly laterally in his career, repeatedly that he does want to get into football management. So we'll see exactly how all that pans out. But we don't know anything about him, his style, his philosophy, his personality as a manager, any of those things. And I'm not saying that there are reasons not to give him the job, because I think his experience as a player and the level that he played at, which is few and far between from an Irish perspective, who knows where his star goes. It certainly wouldn't be a bad thing for the FAI, I think, to hitch themselves to early on. I've definitely been making the point over the last little while that wouldn't it have been prudent of the current Ireland management to have given Robbie Keane at some point a call over the last few months and said, listen, it appears, because it doesn't seem like he's playing anywhere or he's any active involvement in football at the minute, like maybe he has that we don't know about, but do you want to come in for a few camps, take some of the forward sessions, let's see what you're about, like give him that sort of exposure, I think probably would also actually help his development as well. I mean, I know a lot of people are down, obviously, on Martin O'Neill and Roy Keane and all that sort of stuff, but to get some exposure to that, to their experience too, I think might not be the worst thing. And that might even be possible within that Under-21 role, that it might have a reach elsewhere.
Yeah, like a transition year work experience programme, get Robbie Keane into the current Irish managerial setup and see how they operate. There's definitely, I've heard worse ideas than that, definitely. So I think that'd be a good shout. I think the sooner we get into a habit of that, the better in this country. That, like, you should be giving opportunities to these players. And, you know, it's favouritism towards players who've had great careers. But ultimately, as a nation that doesn't produce too many stars, I think
it's a small pot. Like
it is a pretty small pot. It's not going to be a huge kind of layer of favouritism, in my opinion. Like, also, it seems he cares. Like, he wants to be involved with Ireland. Like, would you have been overly surprised if Robbie Keane privately was saying to himself, I don't really want to be involved with Ireland. I'm Robbie Keane. I can potentially manage in the Premier League.
I think he's a long way from managing the Premier League.
No,
he's not like a Frank Lampard or a John Terry type character who probably, you know, could ease themselves into some sort of a high-profile coaching role.
Yeah, no, obviously if he wanted to get to the Premier League, I would say that he would have started off with a club, or would have liked to start off with a club.
Yeah, there's rugby elsewhere, and Lynch in the driving seat for Hurler of the Year, insists nominee Mannion as well. That's Donncha Boyle writing in the back page of the Irish Independent this morning. On the front page of the Irish Examiner sports section, it's crash and burn. A shot of a fairly active Devin Toner's pulling an interesting face in the background there, isn't he? It's like you know that face you pull when you're supposed to be making an effort, but you're not really. But I better let the coaches know that I'm into this, isn't he?
Yeah. I would say that he probably is actually trying his hardest. It is funny that the other two faces you can see in that photo are James Ryan and Devon Toner. Is it going to be a power struggle between the three of them for two positions over the next 12 months to lock down Ireland's second row? I wonder, is the Irish Examiner photo editor saying something to us?
That is the front page of the Examiner. Racism row, 4 travellers quit Clare Soccer over verbal abuse inside there, and Dunn finding his way as Irish lead in Antalya. We're going to have more from that from Will O'Callaghan shortly. The Times Ireland edition this morning, Young Guns given a chance by Schmidt. This is ahead of Ireland versus Italy in Chicago this weekend, and a shot of Kevin De Bruyne injuring his left knee towards the end of last night's Carabao Cup 4th round tie at home to Fulham. And Sterling for Sterling is the other story out here. Sterling to get 300 grand a week to stay at City. That's the Times Ireland edition. And the Irish Times is rugby all the way this morning. That's a shot of the Irish team at a Bulls match, and they're pretty into it as well. If I can get that into shot there.
What happened with Tyke Byrne at that match? At that Bulls match? I saw something on Tyke Furlong's Instagram story where Tyke Byrne got brought out to be the halftime shooter.
What?
But a prank was played on Byrne subsequently. If anybody knows, get in touch, because I was looking through the story last night and I was like, what's actually happening here?
Right.
But hilarity ensued is what I could make out from
you watched the Instagram story, did you?
Yeah, but it wasn't particularly clear from I don't want to say Tyke Furlong is a bad storyteller on Instagram, but I couldn't quite make out what actually was happening.
I'll have a look at that up on your 3 Euro papers. But yeah, the Irish Times this morning is Schmidt opts for mix of youth and experience for the Italy assignment, writes Jerry Thornley in Chicago there.
Back page of the Herald this morning is Keane in, King out. Changes planned as Noel heads for under-21's exit, while FAI and IFA unite for Europe bid. Larmour and Byrne to start the ball rolling. That's the Ireland team named for Chicago this weekend. You're in, Joey, says the back of the Irish Daily Mail. Carberry to start as Schmidt weighs up his reserve options, while Delaney is confident on under-21 bid. And new boy Diaz lights up City. Indeed he did. Brahim Diaz scoring last night as Manchester City beat Fulham 2-0 in the Carabao Cup. A couple of grim stories this morning, leading the way on a couple of the tabloids. Back page of the Star, leading with it. Lennon abuse is anti-Irish. Neil's agent claims targeting is sectarian. Of course, Neil Lennon was hit by a coin in the Edinburgh Derby a couple of nights ago. And back page of the Mirror goes with that story as well. He's Irish, Catholic and was a Celt. Lennon agent claims Hibs boss is targeted over his background, while Schmidt praises A's story. That's their rugby story. Joey's state of mind is what the Sun say on that, but their main lead is our last respects, 12,000 mile round trip for a funeral as Fox's stars go to Bangkok for the tribute. Back page of the Racing Post then is Villa Spark. Smith's hosts ready to ignite stuttering championship season as Aston Villa take on Bolton tonight at 7:45 in the championship. The front of the Racing Post is Play It Sam. Champion hurdle favourite Sam Crow returns at Down Royal. And then a couple of the UK back pages. The Daily Telegraph leading with the rugby. Farrell handed keys to number 10. England co-captain given playmaker role and is called the spiritual leader by Jones. And it's Simone Biles on the back of the Guardian. She leaps into history. The gold rush continues for her in Doha, despite the fact that she had a kidney stone. Incredible achievement. She's the first woman to win four all-around world titles. The GOAT of gymnastics, I think, at this point. And playing on for Weekeye, Puel remembers a truly loved owner as Lester tackle Payne.
That is the back pages this morning. A couple of comments in as well, including one here on YouTube about my comment about Devon Toner supposed to be making an effort but not really in that photograph, says Darragh O'Toole on YouTube. Like that clip of AB and Croker recently dodging marking his or anyone else's man. That's exactly what it, to be fair. I mean, it takes one to know one. So
yes, yeah. Like in fairness, a lot of people got onto me there saying, "Wow, that guy's really trying hard. Tell him to relax. It's not a real competitive game."
Look, I'm all right with it. It's not as if that many people saw it anyway, right? That clip. So
just the 25,000 people.
Yeah, that's the Republic of Ireland under-15 coach Jason Donoghue in conversation with Raf there about the underage structures in Ireland. Here's a bit of a flavour of what's happening inside the back pages this morning. Teenage Kicks is exactly on that theme, by the way. of Irish young players and their development. It features in some of the newspapers this morning. Robbie Keane could be the gaffer. It looks though he might be about to take on the under-21 role with the Republic of Ireland. Cork GA have replaced Frank Murphy. It's the news you thought you'd never see, so we'll bring you that in just a few minutes' time. Richard Dunn is very keen on Stephen Kenny to be the next Republic of Ireland manager, certainly saying he needs to be in the conversation, and the abuse suffered by Neil Lennon on the touchline over the last couple of weeks. So that's what's going on in the back pages this morning. That teenage kick story is generally in relation to the under-21 bid for the European Championships for the Euros in 2023, and the announcement yesterday between the FAI and the Irish FA that they're going to go gung-ho for it, baby, and there's 7 or 8 stadia that are involved in this one. And the point that's been made across a lot of the newspapers, obviously, just about the underage structures in general and where we're at. Obviously, we have a very good under-19 crop at the minute, and so all of those sort of things are intertwined. It looks like Noel King is about to leave the under-21 job shortly. He'll probably remain within the FAI, and that Robbie Keane might be about to take that on. But it did strike up a conversation off air around these parts over the last little while, just about the underage structures and I suppose how fit for purpose they are and how much they feed into the senior team. And I suppose you could look at it and say that they, probably don't feed into it at all, that whatever philosophy we have at an underage level, ultimately a manager comes in and takes over and he plays his style, and he's not going to be hung for having to play a style of football. I suppose that's kind of alien to him. So those conversations have been ongoing, and I would have been of the view, I have to say, that you probably should have a philosophy at underage level that feeds into the senior team, that ultimately there's some sort of tangible link between all of those structures. Interestingly, I was talking to my taxi driver last night on the way home, and he was talking about he's involved in coaching one of the big Dublin clubs, and he was talking about one of the big Premier League clubs having a tie-in with their club, and them coming over and taking sessions and coaching and all that sort of stuff, and mentioned that at this particular club, they have a philosophy of playing which, as he puts it, was a Barcelona-esque football on the deck, bit of tiki-taka, and if I was to tell you the name of the club, you'd be astonished by it. But that ultimately, the club understands that that's their philosophy up to the point that players go into the senior team, at which point the manager will put whatever style they want on it. Which, I mean, it ultimately means that all the underage structures at the club, and in our case, at the country, are totally devoid of any link between the underage structures and the senior team. At a club level, it's a business thing, right? Because if you're developing a whole load of players that come through to under-21 level that are extremely good footballers, it's just a business decision. Most of them will probably can't go into your team because they can't play that type of football, but they'll end up going to Manchester Cities or Barcelona's ideally, or these bigger clubs where the club are going to make a whole pile of money out of them. It's ultimately a business decision, which was, I have to say, for me, a bit of a revelation. I'd never really considered it before.
The fact that people want to make money out of young players. The
fact that you could have an entire system at a club that had one philosophy at underage level of playing football a certain way that had no bearing on what was going on. That isn't always the case. Like, you will have clubs, obviously, like Barcelona, Manchester City, who at senior level are also trying to play that sort of football, but you have a whole bunch of other clubs who we would not consider to be especially pretty to watch. But at underage level, they're doing all this amazing work.
Yeah, and is the amazing work and that kind of easy to watch philosophy, is the end game of that an export policy?
Yeah, 100%. It's like there's no other. I don't think the players they're producing are fit for purpose to go into the teams senior teams that they have.
So that is a little bit of a worrying trend. And ultimately, though, what do you suggest? Do you suggest to them play a more bland style of football at underage level so that they'll be more suited to your senior team?
I flip it the other way, but. You see, you're talking about, I'd like to use a few random examples. You're talking about, so let's say you've all that structure in place, and then the club decide that we're giving the senior job to use some random examples, Big Sam or Mark Hughes or Tony Pulis, whatever the case might be. Like, they're not going to play tiki-taka football for you.
No, it's true. So you're suggesting that they play the same brand at senior level. Like, ultimately at senior level, it's a brand that wins and a brand that keeps you relevant and things like that. But I wouldn't necessarily blame the clubs for something like that. It's just an overall disconnect between underage and senior level in Irish football, because the disconnect exists because the senior opportunities abroad are vastly superior to the senior opportunities in this country if you're talented enough.
Well, it's a different proposition with Ireland than it is with the clubs, because it isn't a business decision. And also, they have the underage coaches who we've just heard from there in the last few minutes, like, they have limited dealings actually with the players. Like, their capacity to instill a philosophy in those players is actually limited enough. But I mean, there are other national examples, Holland obviously being a very famous one, where those philosophies exist from under 13s right the way through to the senior team, and like, it seems to work for them. I mean, in the absence of any success, and I use that term in a very broad sense, in an Irish context, it feels like it'd be worth giving something like that a go. Like, I know we have a very good crop coming through now, and maybe that sort of brushes over a multitude for the next 10 years, but just that there's some sort of a tangible, here a personality. How would you describe the personality in a positive sense of Irish football?
Yeah, it's true. It's definitely one of the fair criticisms of this team that we witness at the moment, that they just, at its very worst, you could say they have no plan.
But I mean of Irish football.
Irish football, there's,
right? Like, even outside of the senior team.
There is none. Like, it's a team-by-team basis. It depends who the manager is, and should the manager have that sort of autonomy to stamp his or her own sort of style on a team, I'm not so sure, particularly at underage level. Like, do we prioritise results at underage level, or do we prioritise producing a brand of football that will lead to senior results? I would kind of lean towards the latter. Like, it was pretty cool seeing Ireland's in that penalty shootout in the summer and in an underage World Cup. It's cool to see your underage teams do well, but maybe if you get used to an actual brand, and it doesn't have to be tiki-taka, it just has to be some sort of brand that's cohesive throughout the ages, then you might actually end up with better results anyway. So I don't know. I think there's a lot of sense spoken there by your taxi driver in terms of that disconnect, and that kind of needs to be turned around a small bit. But ultimately, when it comes to international football, as you say, it is quite different to the club system, and it's more pronounced as well at senior levels. Like, Matt Doherty is a perfect example. Like, ideally, we'd be flipping it the other way in decades to come, where a team is playing crap football with their club and come in to play swashbuckling Irish football, but currently obviously it's the opposite way around, and you can see the detrimental effect that has on his performances, and you do wonder, if they are playing a brand of football that is completely at odds with what we're playing with Ireland, then is it really the best course of action? Whereas Martin O'Neill, I'm sure, feels that with the crop of players that he has, rightly or wrongly, he feels that this is the best system to play with whatever they're actually.
Well, there's no connection there for him between any of, like, an Irish football philosophy. He's got his philosophy and he's putting it on, and actually that's kind of, for me, the crunch point, that it's all to do with results ultimately.
I think it's fair enough at senior level.
We'd have to accept that for a period of time at senior level, and the same would be true at club level if we're talking about some of these clubs, that you'd have to accept people, fans, the citizenry would have to accept for a period of time that results are probably not going to go our way. But, like, my point would be, they're not going our way anyway.
Yeah.
So, like, let's try something new.
Yeah, definitely. And, like, if you can get both, that's the ideal scenario here. We do tend to park the conversations, though, about a dour style of football when things are going particularly well for us.
I know, and we do, and that's perfectly natural, because it's like, sure, look, everything's absolutely fine. We don't need to worry about any of this stuff. But actually we do. Like, we need to have some sort of a discernible personality about our football, and some sort of a discernible plan about where this entire thing goes over the next while. So we'll see. Stephen Kenny is one of the names that comes up in this context. He'd been touted as a potential under-21 manager over the last while, and I know Dan McDonnell on this platform last weekend, I think it was, spoke very vociferously about the idea that Stephen Kenny taking the under-21 job would be a step down, that actually he's at a very good club at the minute and doing a very good job at that very good club, and that anything sort of, he'd be deferential to a senior manager, obviously, at that point, and that would not be the right way for him to go. But writing in the Herald this morning, Richard Dunn, you probably have it there on, comes out very strongly in favour of Stephen Kenny being in the mix for the senior job. He says that, the job that he's done there, he at least deserves to be in the conversation for it. It's this type of an appointment would feed very much into, if Stephen could instill the same belief into the Irish squad as he's done with Dundalk, the players would buy straight into it, writes Richard Dunn. This is the embodiment of exactly everything we're talking about.
Yes,
this is
exactly.
Sort of bringing somebody in who's got a discernible style that's fully embedded in Irish football in a way that, and this is not a criticism of him, the way that Martin O'Neill just could never be, because he's been in England too long, and that's his philosophy on football is, as he says himself, from his time at Nottingham Forest and all that sort of stuff. But Stephen Kenny is Irish football, and his appointment to the Irish senior team wouldn't necessarily be the sexy appointment that O'Neill and Keane was, or that Trapp was. Like, we do tend to go for the grey Galacticos, obviously, in a way that they wouldn't be, but actually would be pretty exciting.
Yeah, definitely. Stephen Kenny is the living embodiment of what you've just been speaking about there, a discernible style of football, but with an air of pragmatism about it. Like, pragmatism doesn't always mean dour football. Pragmatism can include some very high moments, and I think Dundalk have managed to do that, particularly under a Europa League run a couple of years ago. And I think that this is the sort of person, this is the sort of style of football that would suit what is a limited enough currently pool of players down to the ground. It is a style of football that allows those players who, in an Ireland jersey right now, are down in the dumps, to build up that confidence, to see that trickle of light seep through, and, you know, get something meaningful together, get that momentum up and running. I think I'm all for the Stephen Kenny appointment at some level in the FAI. I would be of the extreme view that I'd almost parachute him straight into senior manager, but realistically, under 21 is probably the most realistic thing that could happen for Stephen Kenny.
Yeah, but I mean, look, I'm not sure about that. I'm actually not sure about that. I'm not sure about
the FAI would put him straight in to the top job? I
mean, that's almost an impossible question to answer, but they probably should.
Yeah, I agree. He is the best manager on Irish soil right now.
Yeah.
And as you say, the knowledge of the system that operates at every level in Ireland, there goes a golden envelope flying, is crucial.
Golden envelopes, everybody. The off-the-ball stars. Couple of other quick stories. Neil Lennon has crossed a lot of the tabloid back pages this morning for the abuse that he's been receiving over the last few weeks, and his agent has really come out strongly in his support. If you want to fire me over there, one of them. Yeah, this is the Irish Daily Mirror this morning. He's Irish Catholic and was a Celt, writes the Irish Daily Mirror this morning. Alan Marshall here, his agent, has come out to say that this is the reason he's getting all this abuse, that he got it when he first went to Dens Park, when he was a player for when he first went there for Celtic in 2000, and on it goes, he was hit by a coin obviously on the sideline during the week. That the point being, and I mean, I know Neil Lennon is a very divisive character and he absolutely riles opposition fans up. He certainly ain't unique in that regard in terms of being a manager, but the point being that he's entitled to sort of cup his ears to the fans as he wishes, or to do the airplaying as he wishes. He shouldn't be, because of that stuff. He can be a figure of hate, and I understand all of that sort of stuff, but firing a coin at him is just next level crazy.
Well, yeah, also the graffiti sprayed on the wall near Tynecastle saying "Hang Neil Lennon." Like, that's just absolutely disgusting.
Yeah.
The idea as well, his agent, like, talking about Gary Caldwell's comments saying that Neil Lennon brings a lot of it on himself, kind of misses the point spectacularly, I think. Not the agent's comments, but Caldwell's comments. That, you know, if you're getting physically abused, if you're actually having your name written like that in graffiti around a stadium in which you manage at the moment, then it's a horrible situation. It's not good.
The other story we wanted to touch on was a reshuffle in Cork GAA on that I don't think we ever thought we would see coming.
Yeah, well, we kind of heard a couple of months ago that Frank Murphy was going to step down as Cork secretary, and most people were like, we'll see it when we believe it. And his successor has been appointed, Kevin O'Donovan, who has been vice chairman of Cork County Board. We've had him on the show, I think. He was definitely in the headlines a couple of years ago when he published a 25-point plan that was passed around at a Cork County Board meeting to save Cork football, which raised a lot of eyebrows and made a lot of sense. And for many counties that would be a rival of Cork, was quite a worrying sign that there might actually be light at the end of the tunnel for Cork. So for Cork football, it's a great appointment. For Cork in general, it's a great appointment. He's got a fresh new way of thinking, and I'm sure Cork people will fondly remember the Frank Murphy era.
Yeah,
the legend of the legend of the county board game. I think it's
choose
fair
your
to
words
say.
carefully there, Owen.